To the Point with Michael Williams.
It's one of the largest cities in our area, of course, in West Palm Beach. Soon we'll be choosing a new mayor. March will be here before we know it. What are the candidates' plans for downtown traffic? Will more high-rises be constructed? What is the business model? How do they continue to revitalize neighborhoods? That and much more. Good morning and welcome. 3 candidates running for mayor over the next few weeks. We have invited all of them to explain their goals for the city one by one. We will have them as our guest. And today, one of those candidates, Paula Ryan, a city commissioner since 2015. And welcome to our broadcast. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
For our wider audience in our 5 counties, introduce yourself just a little bit.
So my name is Paula Ryan, and I've been a resident of Palm Beach County for 26 years. I've been in the city for about 17 years. I am an affordable housing developer by profession. My background is in economics and finance, investment banking, and in the early 90s, after the last real estate crisis, I got involved with developing affordable housing communities. I found my niche in life, and that was to provide services for people that were in need of additional support, daycare, healthcare, that kind of life-saving, life-fulfilling, life-altering changes.
You're soon at this, Jerry Moyo, the predecessor for whichever one of you shall be victorious, term limited now. She's had a lot of goals she's laid out. There are a number of them we want to talk about today that you will carry on, and you'll also have your own. What do you see as the biggest issue you would tackle as mayor?
Well, immediately we're going to have to get our arms around the homeless problem. It is a problem, even though everybody in the country is having the similar problem. We're going to have to address it immediately. We've got over 17% poverty in our city, which is not sustainable. We've got an economic vibrancy that we've got to maintain and continue to grow, and that means growing beyond the borders of our downtown. We've got to look at the economic opportunities on some of the gateways into our city, as well as the Dixie Highway and other areas.
So how do you tackle it specifically? You say we have to tackle it, but how specifically would you tackle it? Yes.
Well, I think what you have to understand is that each person on the street, in the last point and count, there were over 400. They're all unique and have their own story. We have to have the skill set meeting them on the street where they are. My goal is to create 24/7 intervention opportunities. That is vans roaming the street, engaging with the homeless individuals, finding their stories, finding out where they can plug into services that are already being made available. We've got a lot of services that have been put in place in the last 10 years. Our big issue is housing, obviously, but we need to meet them on the street where they are.
And talk about the kind of money to make systemic real differences because it ties into affordable housing, it ties into, where possible, mental health services, it ties into employment opportunities. That's a big group of circumstances to wrap one's arms around. So how do you specifically tackle that with money? And what are we talking about in terms of the kind of impact that will be necessary to make anything really achievable?
If you look at what services are currently available in this county, we have job training programs, we have social service programs, we have health programs. They may not be enough, but there are a number of services that are already out there. What we're trying to do is interrupt that process of the person on the street, understanding where they are and plugging them into what's already available. The housing component is obviously a very important aspect of bringing people off the streets and into permanent housing, but that's a transition as well. You're not going to take someone from the street into a house. You've got to be able to put them through a process that's going to ultimately stabilize them. And what we have to do to provide that housing is to address our land use and zoning. Nobody wants these facilities or these housing options in their neighborhood.
Do you worry that we're increasingly, as so often is said about our community at large, it's rich man, rich person, poor person? Because you could have picked any topic, but you feel this one is pivotal to the overall vitality of this city, to create a broader base of opportunity and to look at the welfare for our citizens who are without.
Well, I currently represent the downtown, and I hear every day, every single day, multiple times a day, from our business owners, from our restaurant owners, from our residents, what kind of impact the homeless situation is having on them. I ride throughout the city. I like to ride my scooter. I go on the weekends up to Curry Park, and I see hundreds of people with no place to go. And this is our waterfront. This is what we attract the rest of the world to come and see. And if people come down there and they feel threatened or they feel unsafe, they are not going to spend their money. And
other topics which really tie into what you're talking about, because the Vitality for One hopefully lifts all of those boats. It's not only a local but a national conversation, as you well know. But our friends at the Post, as they profiled you, said you've overseen some of West Palm Beach's poorest neighborhoods, some of its wealthiest. There's questions about development downtown. How much more buildings should we have? Should we see high rises? Put a cap on density and height? How do you marry your concerns there about ongoing downtown development, about the constant need for reinvigorating City Place, which was an engine, but has seen businesses come and go at a much bigger rate over the last many years? Look at that piece of the puzzle, and what are your plans there?
Well, the downtown has had no shortage of attention, and it's a CRA, and that means that everything that's developed in the downtown, the increased property values, stay in the downtown. That's why we're seeing deterioration of our roads and neighborhoods and parks. We don't have an ad valorem tax base that allows us to reinvest. We have to look at the other economic opportunities all along Dixie Highway, Broadway. Those are commercially zoned areas. We have industrial parks. You've seen what's happened in Grandview Market. It's happened organically, and we need to create policies that help more of that.
What about the question posed, should the city clamp down on tall new buildings downtown? Should we spread out development, make it more residential and corporate, or skyline growth? How do you see it?
I believe that we should put into permanent conservation the property along the waterfront that the city owns. I think that density and height are appropriate. As a developer, I'm a follower of smart growth principles. I travel around the country. I meet with communities that are going through the same things that we are going through. And the bottom line is that the people that live in the community are the people that are going to drive what it is that is compatible with the community. And it's not just one neighborhood, it's the entire city, and you have to build out for the entire city.
Mayor Moyo and others have been fighting and talking about the proposed extension of State Road 7, and that fight, west side of Grassy Waters Preserve. There's also the ongoing complaints I hear all the time, Okeechobee Boulevard and the traffic and making it more. How do you make it more appealing for people to come to the downtown core? Talk about those issues and where you stand on them and how you tackle them.
Well, I sit on the Water Resource Task Force for the county, and I also sit on the Transportation Planning Agency. So these are issues that I've been, intimately engaged with for the last 4 years. Okeechobee Boulevard, it's a state road, but we own 2.4 acres right in the middle of that road. Everything else is privately owned. If we're going to start making changes to address the traffic, we are not going to eminent domain somebody else's property. And what we need to do is look at the property that we own and see how we could perhaps solve some of those issues. We've got a train, we've got a bridge, we've got to be able to mitigate and stack up that traffic. 4 lanes into 2 is always going to create a problem. State Road 7, it runs right along one of our premier neighborhoods, and every neighborhood deserves the kind of protection that they are asking for. But more important, the current design of State Road 7 runs right through our water catchment area. And we all know that the water issues are incredibly important. We've got the new governor who is focused on things that he wants to do to deal with the algae blooms. But this is our water supply. We are not pulling from the aquifer, which other communities are. We're not concerned about saltwater intrusion, but we have to protect what's left of the Everglades, and we're regionally connected. And that road cannot go through our water supply, and there are other options, and I hope under my administration that we're going to be able to find those options and work together.
Last 2 questions. In our northern neighborhoods, and we cover it all the time, it seems every few months, we're out there with people saying we need more help to fight crime, we need more help to bring our neighborhoods out of the problems they're having, to raise the standard of living, give more economic opportunity, fight crime. How do you tackle that? It's such a huge problem, and a lot of the complaints are we hear lip service but no real action.
Well, you started this conversation with where does affordable housing come into this equation? The reality is that we need a housing policy that is going to bring more people into the northern part of our community, historic Northwest neighborhood. There are opportunities besides single-family homes. You can look at increased density that doesn't require skyline, skyscrapers. You can look at townhomes along our spines, Broadway, Dixie Highway, that create multiple housing choices for for the people that are living here. And with density, you're going to be able to address a lot of the crime that comes from with no eyes on the street.
Do you have a sense you have the business community on board should you be elected? Because at the end of the day, you need people to have a lot of buy-in to everything you've talked about, most specifically affordable housing, dealing with the homeless issues, dealing with really giving everybody a bigger piece of the pie. How much of a sense that you have them on board with those kind of efforts?
I think that they all feel that the pie gets bigger. And when you start to address these issues, you have economic opportunities coming up around our neighborhoods. You have neighborhoods rising. You have more people choosing to move here, more availability for working at these jobs. I think that the business community recognizes that we can't sustain this model.
Last and briefly, to the audience, and we'll certainly be covering you on the trail here in the next few weeks, but why are you a standout over your opponents, and why are you uniquely qualified among those running to take on this job?
Well, I've been basically running many cities my entire career. I've been working with the lives of my residents. I am looking at our neighborhoods as being the lifeblood of this city. My focus is going to be on revitalizing those communities, bringing back the resources that the community needs, our parks, recreation, and traffic. It's a huge issue for people to get from point A to point B, and the quality of life seems to be the #1 concern that I'm hearing.
Thanks for giving us a brief overview of your intentions and hopes should you be elected as mayor. And Keith James and Paula Ryan here with us today. Priscilla Taylor. We hope to have Priscilla Taylor and Keith James on. We've invited them as well. We'll see you out on the campaign trail in the run-up to how many days? You were telling me before we went on that you count every morning.
I believe we're at 32, maybe 32 and 31 and a half. But yeah.
We will see you through it and at the end of it as well. And thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you.
We greatly appreciate it. Much more from our analyst when we come back about President Trump, about national politics, and the intertwining with our state politics as well.